Here. So this is a monthly series that I started back in May, and I am reading through Age Less, Live More, Achieving Health and Vitality at 107 Years and Beyond. It's Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers and all the grandfathers and the uncles and all the men out there and all the men that may be have adopted family or have adopted someone or mentors. Men are really, really needed. Men are really needed as protectors and setting good examples to cherish, their family and to cherish their spouses, to cherish their loved ones. Your word is your bond, and it's really important. And it's something that I really appreciated about my grandfather, about Bernando. If he said he was going to do something, he did it. So, tonight, as I pointed out in the description, we're going to be focusing on the next 2 top 10 superfoods that Bernando lists in his book, Age Less, Live More. But before I get into that, because it's Father's Day, I wanted to read the acknowledgement at the beginning of his book. This book is dedicated to my dear father, Bernando LaPallo Sr., who started me on the path to optimum health. I am grateful that he consistently taught me about proper nutrition, mental discipline, and awareness of the body, mind, and spirit connection. He taught me to think of my body as a temple and to nourish it with the great food that Mother Earth grows for us. And he taught me about God and how to treat myself and others with the utmost respect. I would not be the person I am today if it were not for my father. When Bernando wrote those words, he was already 106 years old. He was 106 years old, and he was in the process of writing this book with Anne Cornelius. 106. So that just goes to show how important a father is, how important a father figure is, that, he's writing those words and he's already over a century old. So a century is 4 generations. So shout out to all the dads, and I'm also very grateful to Bernando because he was my grandfather, but for me, he was like my father, like more direct. That's because he embodied all those characteristics of discipline and consistency and self-care and dignity and warmth and always willing to teach and show and answer questions and be patient in a way that my own biological father wasn't capable of doing. Okay, so I am going to start off with garlic. If you've been around here for a while, you definitely know that Bernando was in love with garlic. Okay, garlic, a stinking rose by any other name. There is a debate raging in Italy right now regarding garlic. Many fine restaurants want to eliminate this wonderful herb entirely because they feel that it is somehow beneath them. They consider garlic a, quote, lower class, unquote, food, a holdover from less affluent times, and now wealthy Italians can somehow do better. Big mistake. History. Garlic, sometimes called the stinking rose and heal-all, is another one of those amazing plants recognized for its medicinal powers for many thousands of years. In fact, it has been used for this purpose by more cultures than any other plant or plant substance in history. The first recorded use for this bulbous herb was in Mesopotamia in what is now Iraq some 6,000 years ago. Nearby Egypt also found many uses for garlic. Interestingly, the only recorded slave revolt in ancient Egypt, other than Exodus, occurred due to lack of garlic when the Nile flooded out the fields. A medical volume published in Egypt in 1550 BC lists 22 different medicinal uses for the herb, ranging from the treatment of tumors and skin diseases to poisoning and heart ailments. It was inscribed in the Great Pyramid of Cheops and placed inside King Tut's tomb. Clearly, they thought this was pretty potent stuff. Sanskrit records show its usage over 5,000 years in India, and it has been known in China for 3,000 years or more. Ancient Greeks, not to be outdone, used it for strength during the Olympic Games, and the famous Roman physician, Galen, called it a near cure-all, suitable to treat countless ailments. In the Middle Ages, garlic was used to treat the plague. Albert Schweitzer used it to cure typhoid fever and cholera in Africa in the early 1900s, and during World War II, it was widely known as Russian penicillin because of its strong antibacterial qualities. Obviously, there's something to this little white bulb. Recommendations. Garlic is another of those products that are offered in numerous forms, from fresh to coarsely and finely chopped to capsules and pills. Processing the raw cloves causes many chemical changes to take place within the herb's chemical structure, so the benefits of using a fresh clove will quite possibly not apply to other forms. So, as I always say, fresh is best. A person with a green thumb might want to consider growing garlic for themselves. It's easy and very rewarding. If this isn't an option, then I would strongly recommend buying only fresh cloves, then storing them in a cool, dark, and dry environment until needed. I do not recommend the jars of chopped garlic available in grocery stores, simply for the reason stated above. And I personally believe that the amount of processing required for capsules or pills also affects the beneficial properties in a negative way, and so cannot recommend these either. Then Bernando goes into the benefits of garlic. There are something like 200 different chemical compounds contained within a clove of fresh garlic. The compounds can actually change and recombine depending on how the herb is prepared. One of the main compounds, known as allicin, is what gives garlic its characteristic odor and is a potent antibacterial, killing at least 23 types of bacteria, including Salmonella and Staphylococcus. Allicin is not actually present in the whole clove, but is produced by crushing and then only briefly. Allicin was thought to be what was giving garlic its medicinal qualities, but was later found to be destroyed by the acid of the stomach. Therefore, it appears that some of the other compounds must be doing the job, at least on the inside of the body. Because of the sheer number of compounds and the fact that there are over 150 varieties of the herb, pinning down exactly how it does what it does has been difficult. These are some of the things that have been observed to date. Garlic appears to kill H. pylori in the stomach, which is linked to ulcers and stomach cancers. It has also been shown to slow the growth of prostate and breast cancer cells. In fact, many cancers seem to be hampered by garlic's anti-tumor effect. It appears to have a positive impact on cholesterol levels and may prevent LDL, which is known as the bad cholesterol, from oxidizing and binding to arterial walls, an obvious benefit for reducing heart disease and atherosclerosis. It was observed to lower cholesterol levels by an average of 9% in people who ate 2 cloves of garlic per day. Recent studies have also shown it to protect the aorta, one of the main blood vessels of the heart. Age, poor diet, and environmental factors, such as smoking, can damage the aorta, causing it to stiffen. Regular consumption of garlic seems to slow the aging of the aorta and helps keep it flexible. One can also benefit from garlic during pregnancy. According to a study done by doctors in a London hospital, garlic supplementation may help weight gain for babies that would otherwise be at risk for low birth weight. The study also found that the chance of other at-birth risk factors could be reduced, such as preeclampsia, which is associated with hypertension. Garlic contains powerful antioxidants that protect the body from free radicals, molecules that damage cells and DNA, and can accelerate the aging process. Garlic sulfur compounds can help regulate blood sugar metabolism, stimulate and detoxify the liver, and improve blood circulation and the nervous system. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm blown away. I'm blown away by all these health benefits. So again, before I go on to the uses of garlic, this is why I like to reread this book every year, because it helps me remember the things that I have, intellectually or consciously forgotten. Because at this point, at my age of 62 and having basically been following my grandfather's example for decades now, there's just things that I do by habit, right? By discipline. But it's good to learn these things. It's good to remind ourselves of these things, which is why I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to read aloud to you and share this book with you, because it helps me remember as well, right? So things move out of the realm of, folklore or, what do they call that? Folk medicine, or, even maybe wives' tales into reality. So, the things that Bernando did, of course, he did because they were passed down to him. But, as time has gone on, these have been, quote, scientifically proven through different studies, right? But of course, if any of you are Italian, you may have had relatives that lived a good long time, right? Into their late 90s or even their hundreds, and some of the things that they made a regular part of their diet was olive oil, right? Extra virgin olive oil, and definitely garlic. So this is amazing. So, the proof is in the pudding. Okay, so I'm going to go on and read the uses before I sort of backtrack and just kind of recap these amazing things about garlic. Uses. I absolutely love garlic and eat it faithfully every day, both as part of my superfood drink and with many of my meals. People are generally amazed that I don't get colds, and honestly can't remember the last time I was sick. I believe that eating garlic every day is one of the reasons this is so. So give a stinking rose to someone you love. They'll thank you for it. So this is something that my grandfather would say regularly on interviews. There's many interviews that he did that are posted on YouTube And he would always say, you know, I've never been sick. I've never had a cold. Never had a cold a day in my life. And I don't remember my grandfather ever being sick with a cold or having a fever. I mean, you know, quote, the sickness that he did experience is because there was a drunk driver that hit him in a car accident. And as a result of that, he broke several ribs and then had to be in the hospital for about 8 weeks and put in traction. But that was an external event. That wasn't something that he brought upon himself, you know, due to poor dietary habits. So the other thing I'll mention, if you're not aware of it already, is that there is a video on Bernando's dedicated YouTube channel, which is called Age Less, Live More. And he shows this young man who's already, my goodness, probably in his early 50s at that point, how to make his garlic paste. So essentially, he's taking extra virgin olive oil and he's taking fresh cloves of garlic and putting them in a little blender, or sometimes you can get those mini food processors, and just putting it in there and blending that all up, scraping it out, putting it in a clean, sterilized jar, and putting that in the refrigerator, because he would use, you know, he would use a generous amount. He would use pretty much close to a tablespoon of that, and he would put that in his superfood smoothie. Of course, in his superfood smoothie would be a generous amount of blueberries. He would put it in a base of orange juice. He would also put a ripe banana in there. And then he would put in several tablespoons of the superfood powder. So, of course, the ripe banana, you know, gives a natural sweetness. And the blueberries basically covered over, you know, any garlic taste. You know, some people have a hard time with it. He'd also say that if you're worried about your breath, to use parsley, you know, to use fresh parsley. So you'll find in traditional Italian restaurants, when they're using garlic, they're also using plenty of parsley, you know, in the dish as well. So that's intentional. That's not an accident, right? That's to help deal with the, you know, potential, quote, bad breath, you know, that you can get from using garlic. In addition, as he mentions here, whenever he was cooking his green vegetables, asparagus, that was a favorite, broccoli, that was a favorite, spinach, fresh spinach, definitely a favorite. He would mince, you know, a couple of cloves of garlic, and he would also use onion. He used to say that garlic and onions were cousins. And that's what he would, you know, lightly saute in a little extra virgin olive oil. And then he would sort of lightly saute and kind of steam his greens. And I saw him do this all the time. So I think that makes a pretty good case for consuming fresh garlic. I just want to go back over here a moment before we go on to the second item, which is going to be the quinoa, which is his other top 10 food that he mentions in his book. Again, you know, just the amount of time and longevity that garlic has been around in the human diet. So to recap, he's pointing out that in Mesopotamia, now known as Iraq, 6,000 years. In Egypt, it was found in the tomb of King Tut. It was published in a medical volume in 1550 BC in Egypt as well, which apparently lists 22 different medicinal uses for the herb, again, ranging from treatment of tumors and skin disease to poisoning and heart ailments. If anyone's got a way to get a list or a copy of this Egyptian medical book, I would love to know that. So if any of you got any information on that, let me know in the comments. Again, it says that it was inscribed in the Great Pyramid of Cheops. Then it shows how it appears in India, right? And then how Chinese 3,000 years ago. He's saying that you should eat fresh. That's what he's saying, Jean. I think what my grandfather thinks, basically. You know, so it's in terms of medicinal purposes, you should be using fresh. Garlic, garlic powder or garlic salt, sure, it tastes good on, garlic bread. But I'm not sure, if there's been any medical studies done on how good garlic powder is for for your health, right? So, whenever I'm talking about what Bernardo's talking about, you should just know, as a rule of thumb, we're always talking about using the item, the food, close to nature, as as nature intended, or as God intended. In general, anything that's been processed is not going to be effective because there's so many different things that you have to do to process things. Also, I would imagine that garlic powder, read the label. What's in the label? What's in there, right? It's really, really important to read labels. So, am I saying that you can never use garlic powder or you should never use garlic salt? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he's being pretty clear here about its medicinal purposes. And I'm pretty sure they weren't using garlic salt or garlic powder in ancient Egypt, right? Okay. Now, moving on, I am going to move on to, here he says it again. Garlic is another of those products that are offered in numerous forms, from fresh to coarsely and finely chopped to capsules and pills. Processing the raw cloves causes many chemical changes to take place within the herb's chemical structure. So the benefits of using a fresh clove will quite possibly not apply to other forms. So, as I always say, fresh is best. He also goes on to say that growing garlic is easy and rewarding, and that it's pretty easy to do, and that when you store it, you should keep it in a cool, dark, and dry environment until needed. He doesn't even recommend buying, pre-chopped garlic from the store. Sometimes in a pinch, sure. I guess you can do that, but I just gave, the formula for him doing, what am I trying to say? Garlic paste. And again, there's also a demo of Bernardo showing Steve how to make garlic paste. And then also I did a demo later on of showing you how to make garlic paste, because I was trying to puzzle out, the ratio of olive oil to garlic cloves. Okay, so now let's talk about quinoa, which he calls the mother of all grains. Most of those living in the United States will recognize many of the foods recommended in this chapter, and will quite probably already have most of them in their pantries or refrigerators. But many will not be familiar with quinoa, it's spelled Quinoa, but it's pronounced quinoa, although it is one of the healthiest and oldest foods around. Of course, people have come up to speed now. If you go to a place like Trader Joe's, for example, they sell quinoa, right? But back when this was published in 2008, it wasn't a mainstream item the way it is now. History. Quinoa is not a cereal grain in the conventional sense, but is actually a member of the goosefoot family, which includes sugar beets and beetroot. Its cultivation can be traced back 9,000 years to Bolivian natives living in the Lake Titicaca area. It was also grown in the Andes Mountains at altitudes of 10 to 20,000 feet, where it thrived in the poor soil, freezing temperatures, and minimal rainfall. The Incas considered it more valuable than gold, calling it the mother of all grains. So I just want to stop here because one of the things that I imbibed from Bernando and that I stress regularly is that God has put something on every corner of the earth to supply us with the nutrition that we need based on the climate, the altitude, the circumstances of where we live. And I just think this is an amazing example of it because as far as we're concerned, right, at least in America, these growing conditions for quinoa sound downright hostile. How is it possible that something that is so beneficial is growing at high altitudes of 10 to 20,000 feet in a place where the soil appears to be, very poor and where there's minimal rainfall and where it's often freezing temperatures? Wow. So this is one hardy plant. Archaeologists exploring a cave in Alabama in 1961 found remnants of a charred basket that contained seeds of the quinoa family. Upon further examination by the Smithsonian, it was determined that the basket was about 2,000 years old. Quinoa was limited to South and Central America until being brought to the United States in the 1980s by Stephen Gorad and Don McKinley. While in Bolivia, they were introduced to quinoa by their spiritual teacher, who encouraged them to eat it in order to achieve deeper spiritual sensitivity during meditation. They brought it back to see if it would grow in the Rocky Mountains, and it did. Quinoa is now being grown in Colorado, New Mexico, California, and Canada. Recommendations. Quinoa can now be purchased in many grocery and health food stores and is available whole, as flakes, or even milled into flour. The grain keeps well and can be stored for up to several months. I prefer using the whole grain for reasons detailed below. Purchase pre-rinsed if possible, which has a uniform yellowish color. Otherwise, you will have to remove the bitter outside coating through adequate rinsing or soaking. If unsure, ask the grocer or check the label. Now, this is interesting what he says here because, of course, nowadays they sell, there's red quinoa and there's the dark quinoa and then there's a lighter quinoa. But if you look in the posts in the discussion area for this event, I did post a beautiful photo of red quinoa, growing. So there appear to be more varieties. Perhaps Bernando wasn't aware of the different varieties when he published this book. Benefits. Quinoa's protein content is quite high and is considered a complete protein because it provides 8 essential amino acids. For this reason, it has become very popular among vegetarians and vegans. It also contains many minerals, including iron, phosphorus, calcium, and magnesium. Quinoa is also a great source of fiber and is gluten-free, making the seeds easy to digest and excellent alternative to more conventional grains like wheat and for those with food allergies. On the medical front, quinoa has been shown to combat cancer, increase energy, and strengthen bones because of its high calcium content. It packs 4 grams of fiber per serving and thus helps lower the risk of high cholesterol, heart disease, and stroke. According to an Australian Blue Mountains eye study, protein and polyunsaturated fats, both found in quinoa, may help prevent cataracts. Today, it is commonly used for altitude sickness. Natives of the Andes claim that it helps strengthen women during pregnancy and postpartum and promotes healthier milk in nursing mothers. The Andean peoples also advise eating plenty of quinoa to heal broken bones and to apply a plaster made of quinoa flour and water. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Uses. This grain is very easy to cook and can, for the most part, be treated like rice when preparing. Okay, let me read that again. The grain is very easy to cook and can, for the most part, be treated like rice when preparing. Add 1 cup of quinoa to 2 cups of boiling water and simmer for around 15 minutes. You will see the germ, looking like a small sprout, uncurl from the seed. It is done cooking when it still has a bit of firmness. Quinoa can be used as a side dish, in soups, or as a meal by itself. Because of its pleasant nutty flavor, it serves as a great breakfast combined with fruits, cinnamon, and nuts. It easily absorbs other flavors as well. The whole raw seed can be sprouted by placing it in water for a few hours. Not overnight, it sprouts quickly. Doing this activates various enzymes and enhances its vitamin content. It can then be used over salads or other cold dishes. If you haven't yet tried this remarkable and sacred grain, I would strongly recommend it. Incredible. Amazing. Quinoa. No wonder it's called the mother of all grains. A grain which isn't exactly a grain. Okay. So one of the interesting things that caught my eye in this reading is the fact that archaeologists exploring a cave in Alabama in 1961 found remnants of a charred basket that contained seeds of the quinoa family. And then they realized the basket was about 2,000 years old. So it seems as if someone was traveling, right, and brought this on foot to Alabama. Amazing, amazing. Because, of course, we consider today that it was limited to South and Central America. But it seems like if you go back 2,000 years, somebody knew that quinoa was a good food to have around. Again, he points out that today that these things are being grown in Colorado, New Mexico, California, and Canada. Those places definitely have high altitudes, and it's become mainstream. Again, this is something you can find in Trader Joe's. You can even order this online. There's a local Indian grocer that I frequent here in New York City, and they carry quinoa as well. So buying it in bulk, if you can buy it in larger quantities, you'll be better off because it's cheaper to buy that way. Again, it's just so interesting how these two different foods that we've talked about this evening are related to lowering the risk of high cholesterol and heart disease, right? How these foods preserve heart disease. And also, interestingly enough, quinoa seems to be good for possibly preventing cataracts. Now, with anything in life, sometimes, when you start to do something, can determine, what's the word I'm looking for? How you move forward in life, right? So this doesn't mean that you shouldn't start eating healthy at whatever age you are at. At whatever age you're at, you're never going to be at a disadvantage by treating your body as a sacred temple that it is, and quote, eating clean and knowing what to eat. But, obviously, grandfather always stressed how important it was to start young children, off in this way before they start to form bad habits and get addicted to different sugars and soda pops and all these types of things. I just wanted to mention that. I just felt like someone needed to hear that. So if you're starting to do these things a little bit later in life, be patient with yourself and notice how you feel, because there can be no price on feeling good. Very interestingly, how he points out that today it's used for altitude sickness. And I also like how he's pointing out here that it can help women during pregnancy and postpartum, right? Women often get depressed after having a baby. There's so much, demands on your body, from carrying a child to giving birth to the child to then having to nurse the child. So here, for the women of the Andes, it promotes healthier milk, which is very important. And then, amazingly, again, encouraged to eat it for healing broken bones and then making a plaster out of quinoa flour and water. So now you see people in these kind of like mechanical boots and things. But I remember when I was a kid, if you broke a leg or you broke an arm or something, they always put you in a plaster cast. So reading this, it begs the question, which is better? Which is better? I'm gonna guess that probably using a plaster cast or using a cast, that is made with something like this, like quinoa flour for treating broken bones, is better for you. I've heard different people say that the issue with these new boots that they put on everyone is that they're so heavy that it's actually can sort of, really slow down the healing process or even sort of re-break the bone that you're trying to heal. I see so many people walking around with those things, but they're never used crutches. Don't you want to keep the weight off something? What do you think? All right, check this out. So, in preparation for this talk today, I went down to the deli and I thought, wait a minute, don't they have quinoa in here? And they do. Look at this. So this is the golden quinoa that Bernando was talking about. And it was in the vegan section, in the prepared foods that they make there, fresh every day. And in it, it's got little pieces of apricot, and it has cranberries in it, and it also has parsley in it. So again, this has become a really mainstream food, whereas before, you really had to like hunt to find this type of thing. So let me see who is watching today. So I appreciate you all being here, whether you're watching this now or whether you're going to watch this later or whether you're watching this on YouTube. Okay, so Tim is here. Yay. Joni is here. Faye. Hi, Faye is here. Cindy Larson is here. Thanks for being here. John Simpson is here. Thank you for being here. Hey, Michael Lamb. How are you? You recently had a birthday. You had a birthday a few months ago, right? Happy birthday to you. And thank you so much for helping me do the podcast for Bernando. Thank you so much. So all of y'all, if you're not aware of the podcast, it's a series of interviews that Michael Lamb helped me put together when I was staying out in Apache Junction, Arizona, not long after Bernando passed away. I stuck around, and I interviewed different people that Bernando knew out there that had interactions with him, because he used to go out to Apache Junction on a regular basis to actually give lectures to, as he put it, the old people, the old people out there, He started doing that, I think, at about 109, and he did that up until, about 112 or 113, right? So Michael was a sweetheart and worked very hard to help me put these podcasts together, right? Even though it was more work than he anticipated, but there are some gems on there, and I'll post the link to the podcast that's on Apple. Jean Woods is here. Always good to have you here, Jean. And then also, let me see, Yanis Lao is watching. Thank you. And let's see, Renardo Harmon is here and watching. I've never tried quinoa cooked with rice, Jean, but maybe I'll try doing that sometime with brown rice. So does anyone have any questions, or if anyone's got any questions or any thoughts? Finished a little bit earlier tonight. Oh, I also wanted to mention that there is a special right now for Father's Day that Dr. Richard Schultz or American Botanical Pharmacy is offering free shipping until, or I should say through June 16th. He usually ends that offer in the evening. So I can also post the link for that. So if there's anything that you want to try, because shipping is sort of expensive, like the Superfood Plus, or there's even a superfood kind of a protein that has dried blueberries in it now. So I know for sure that Dr. Schultz took that cue from Grandpa, no doubt about it. Different things for women, different things for men, different things for your eyes, of course, things for your kidneys, for your liver, to clean out your bowels, different specialty products, so many different things for circulation and all of that. So I'll post that. Faye is here. Thank you, Faye, for being here. I don't think Michael, did I say Michael Ellie? Thank you for watching, Michael Ellie. Appreciate you being here. So please like, comment, and share on this video. Share this with someone you love. Also, you may have noticed that I posted the fact that there are 2 versions of Age Less, Live More. Of course, there's the English version, but several years ago, I also had it translated into a Spanish language version, because I feel, just from my observation, that there are many of our Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters that could use some encouragement and some advice, for taking care of their health. I see a lot of people working themselves to the bone and not taking the time to take care of themselves. And also, just as an encouragement to the men, ladies, get your man the book, or your nephew the book, or your cousin the book, or your uncle or your grandfather or your dad the book, because sometimes men need to hear from other men. Yes, men like to hear our advice, but it's going to be sometimes more relatable to them to hear from someone like Bernando, who was a working man, who was a family man, who worked on his feet 8 or 9 hours a day as a chef, who lived through the Second World War, who lived through the Great Depression, who lived through the Civil Rights Movement, who lived through so many things, but was able to maintain a balance, knew how to reduce his stress, right? And always treated himself with love and care, and took the time to do that. A lot of times, men these days can feel stigmatized, or I gotta work. They put work before their own personal health, between their bodily health, their mental health, their spiritual health, and then they end up dying early of heart attacks and diabetes and so many things that are really unnecessary. So I really highly recommend that you shop and buy a copy or 2. The books are in print. They're only $17.99, right? And there you have it. So that being said, thank you so much for being here. In case I didn't introduce myself properly, my name is Rrika. I'm Bernando LaPallo's oldest grandchild, and I'm the maintainer of his legacy. I am so grateful that you are watching today, and I want to wish you all peace, blessings, a clean liver, a clean colon, and longevity and happiness with your family. Let me see. Renardo says, as men, we have to start soaking our feet also as self-care. It has really helped and is relaxing. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Bernando used to do that every evening. I already told the last story on the previous video that when I was staying with him, when he was staying in that, senior residence, which fortunately didn't last much longer after I arrived, is that he was soaking his feet one day, as it was customary, and the cleaning lady came in and she didn't realize that he was in the bathroom soaking his feet. And so she opened the door, and there he was soaking his feet while sitting in his bathrobe. And she blurted out, "It's really true. You really do soak your feet." And he thought he was like kind of indignant. He was like, "Of course I do." And he mentioned that to me later. He mentioned the incident to me later. And he said, "Why would I say that I do something if I didn't do it?" Right? Because of course he published that in his books about soaking his feet. So yeah, it is very relaxing, and you can do it, while you're reading a book or watching TV or, talking to your spouse or just need some time to chill out. So I'm glad that you are doing that, Renardo. That's great. Thank you for being here, Nadine. And it is 7:46 p.m. So if you're tuning in now, you can watch from the beginning later. Again, thank you very much. Happy Father's Day to all. And I wish you a pleasant rest of your afternoon and evening, wherever you're tuning in from. Bye-bye now.